Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Denim Tims here. My name is AJ Tims, and we got another lovely episode on Season 4 of Epic or Trash. This time around, this video caught my attention for a lot of different reasons, and I feel like it's one that should be talked about here because I've seen a good bit of discourse about Windows in relation to Linux and macOS because the story has gotten very crazy lately. And like I said, I saw this video and I feel like I should comment on it because there's a lot good, but there's a lot that I disagree with. And overall, honestly, I just want to talk about the subject, but also talk about the video itself and the production. Because obviously, Epic or Trash is all about rating videos and discussing if the video was good or not, what was good about it, what was bad about it, what could be done to improve and whatnot. Because I'm not here to try to destroy streamers and, well, the dreamers obviously, and creators and whatnot. I legitimately want to help people make better content, so I hope that my opinions and explanations make a lot of sense and whatnot. So obviously you see all my handles right there, so you can go ahead and follow me all across the board if you want. But let's get into this, shall we? Let's not delay this any longer than we need to. So we're here on the scene, and the video is titled, "You Cannot Debloat Your Way Out of Windows Telemetry." And that's a interesting statement to make. A very, very interesting statement. So I'm curious to see what he's got to prove that you can't, because in my opinion, there is, in my opinion, ways to get out of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to what you want to deal with, you as the user of the platform, whatever that may be. So let's go ahead without much further ado and get into this video.
Debloat your way out of Windows telemetry. I'm aware there's an entire genre of scripts and videos out there promising to strip telemetry out of Windows 11. Debloat this, disable that, block these 50 things, and they probably work until they don't, which is because Windows loads an update and quietly some of what you turned off comes back on. Or Microsoft adds an endpoint that wasn't on your firewall block list because they didn't exist when you built the block list, so now that needs to be updated as well. And before someone says just block all the updates, sure, you could, but that would leave you with an operating system full of unpatched security holes, and I really don't recommend that. I feel like choosing Windows and then trying to strip the telemetry out of it is like getting into a relationship with a stack of red flags, convinced you can fix them. And look, if you're into that, go for it. I'm not here to yuck on your yum. It's a fun game people like to play. Now, I didn't make this video just to complain about Windows, but to take a closer look at the alternatives. I want to start out by talking about the Apple that I'm using right now, the Mac Studio. This is what I use for my content creation, recording, and then video editing using DaVinci Resolve. I choose to have an Apple account on this. It is not required. And that's where the distinction really starts separating from Windows, because I know there's methodologies you can use to create a local account on Windows, but boy, it's some steps. And I know someone's going to say, but it's easy. You just load this tool and that tool, but then it bugs you unless you remove the telemetries. I think it wants you to sign up for an account all the time in Windows now. It's really annoying. It's not something Microsoft wants you to do. So back to if you like playing the game of I can fix it, well, that's one of the challenges you face. Versus Apple, as of here in July of 2026, you can still set an Apple laptop up and load it without having an account with Apple at all. You can buy the device, you can own the device, you can just get updates for the device. I did.
So here's the thing about telemetry. Here's the thing you have to note about it, right? Is that when you're buying a Windows machine, when you're buying stuff like that, you have to remember that the Windows license usually is bought and paid for while you get the machine. Microsoft doesn't make their money off of the copies that they sell. They make their money off of the data they collect and sell. So that's why a lot of people want to rip a lot of the telemetry out of the system, because they don't want to deal with it. I mean, honestly, do you like the idea of Microsoft basically knowing everything you do with the machine and how you use the machine and whatnot? Like, no. Nobody does this, goes,
wow. Oh, yeah.
To the idea, yeah, sure.
Wow.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I'm fairly confident people want to do that. No, they don't. Obviously, they don't. They don't want to do that. They want their machine to work, and they don't want to deal with the fact that some company is spying on them. Most people, when they buy a machine, most people I know usually don't care or even know that most of their data, if not the vast majority of their data, is being sent to a Microsoft server or sets of servers to be processed. Most people usually don't know that. They usually are somewhere along the lines of they don't care. Like, just usually they don't care. They're the kind of people that they legitimately they do not care as long as their system works. That's all they care about. So I get what he's saying here, but I highly, highly disagree with what he's saying. I do think you can. Because honestly, I mean, you can build custom versions of it. At least to my knowledge, you could. I mean, they may have taken that way with Windows 11, given Microsoft's notorious history. But still, that's the thing, right? Is that you can, in some extent, do that. But let's continue.
Choose, as I said, to put an account on it. And I made a list here, and this is a forum post that I'll leave linked, of all the places it reaches out to. Pretty much what you might expect when you have an Apple account. Software update checks, time sync, certificate revocation, kind of the standard plumbing things that you expect out of a Mac. Now, for those of you wanting to know, can you lock the Mac down even further? Or is there a bunch of scripts you have to use for that? Actually, this was a good post by Michael titled, "Yes, your Mac is spying on you." So yes, there is some level of data they do, but, and this is a big but, there are ways to...
So let's go back and read through that article a little bit, shall we? Because I feel that's a little misleading. A little bit misleading, in my opinion. Let's see. I'm going to bring the audio down, and I'm going to take this to playback of 55, and I'm going to bring it back here because I want him to slowly show while I read it here, right? Because here's the thing. I want to show a little bit of what the article is saying. When I came back to the Mac a few years ago after using Windows full-time since college, one of the big upselling points was privacy. I knew that Windows was a privacy dumpster fire. Well, unfortunately, it really is. Windows sends concerning amounts of telemetry to Microsoft with no way to turn it off without registering tricks and third-party tools. But macOS, so I believed, was better. I didn't have to worry about stupid amounts of data being collected about me, and it would just work, in quotation marks, obviously. Because for the most part, that is true. macOS does just work. Now, someone who's a bit of a tinkerer, tends to find ways to break it that I didn't know was possible. If I wasn't such a giant tinker all the time, I wouldn't probably break my system as easy as I do. And it's, again, on me, not on macOS. It's not macOS's fault that I do stupid things and then wonder why the system breaks. I mean, that's just the name of the game there. But getting back to it, right? Because at least that's what Apple's marketing team wanted me to believe. Apple still banks on the privacy selling point. Privacy, that's Apple, or so they say. As it turns out, that's not entirely true. As much as I love Mac and macOS, it's collecting data about me. And your Mac, it's absolutely collecting data about you and sending it to Apple too. And if you decline to share analytics when you set up your Mac. To be fair, much of this can be turned off, and it's not even the same ballpark as Windows 11, but still something to understand. And then reading through here, and what it shows, here's what they collect. Spotlight searches, for example. Spotlight is Apple's excellent search tool that lets us look for apps, files, and even run certain actions. And macOS Tahoe, it saw some much needed love and learned some new tricks. As useful as it is, though, out of the box, Spotlight sends your search queries to Apple for processing and to improve search. To do its job, Spotlight collects quite a bit of data that stays local on your machine, including the following: file metadata, the names of every file, folder, and app on your Mac. It also notes which file was created, when it was last opened, its size, and who created it. For photos, images, and embedded GPS data, also collected. I, I, again, if it's local on the machine, it's not really a problem. Now, if we're talking about sending it over to their servers, that's a different. Now place into the ballpark. Okay, that's not okay. Unless you like clearly tell me, hey, you're opting into sending this data to Apple servers. But again, reading the top right there, going back to earlier, like right there, as useful as this though, out of the box, it's your search queries to Apple for processing to prove a search. To do its job, Spotlight collects quite a bit of data that stays local, keyword local, on your Mac, your machine, your Macintosh, your Mac OS, whatever you want to call it, the Apple bug, the Apple laptop, the names that Apple is probably mad at me for using right now because I said them. But the fact of the matter is that, again, it says stays local. So I'm not understanding the problem here. Maybe I'm just not a giant privacy nerd like I should be, but the fact of the matter is I'm not seeing a problem with it keeping the metadata on the machine. Now, if you're saying it gets sent over to Apple servers, then we got a different situation. Reading further here, file contents. Spotlight also records the contents of your files so it can understand what they are, basically. That includes text, images, videos, and so on. This is also can provide results when you search for the contents of the files and not just the name of the file. Personal communications. Your messages, if you use the iMessage app, are collected. The contacts, calendar, dates, events, appointments, and reminders. Safari browsing data. It collects the sites you visit and the ones you favorite. This collection happens constantly in the background, and from the first moment you log into your Mac after each macOS update, but major update, I should say. But this data stays local and isn't sent to Apple. See, this that's not concerning. So I don't understand. How is that a problem? If it all stays local on your freaking machine, what's the problem? That's what I'm talking about. Fear-mongering tactics, in my opinion. That's fear-mongering. This should not have been if anything, you should have stated this is how it should be. Like, this is an example of how Apple keeps their data private using AI tools, because technically Spotlight's technically a AI tool. If you really want to call it that. I mean, that's like stretching the definition of an AI tool, like stretching a foam pad over the top of a microphone to block certain frequencies. So it doesn't. So I should say my microphone doesn't sound like I'm farting into it 24/7, which are called implosives. If you've never looked them up, look up implosives, and you'll understand why I have a pop filter right here. That's what it's called, by the way. Anyways, getting back into it, I'll let him speak in a moment, but I want to kind of like get back to that. I want to no, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna let it roll through. Boom. Now, the good news here is that Spotlight does not send any of the contents of our files and data. That this search data is reportedly not tied to an Apple ID or email, but rather to a rotating identifier. However, I do not love the fact that every 15-minute intervals my computer is sending some sort of data information to Apple, identifiable or not. No, it does not tell Apple about the contents of the files, but it does show Apple the names of my files and folders, my interests, my approximate location, and other data about my system. See, now this is where I can find it concerning. And then tied directly to me, I prefer not sending that sort of information. I imagine many of us are in the same boat. Because the best way to fix this is head over to Apple settings, Mac settings or system settings. Click on Spotlight and uncheck Help Apple Improve Search. Optimal uncheck Show Related Content as well. Let's see. For overkill, click Delete Search History button, then click Delete. See, again, but my problem is that earlier, if we go back to earlier, right? Like if we go back to earlier where he says right here, when we go down here, right, is like most of it is local. So this is what it says. He says it collects, right? which is search queries, the keystrokes, words, characters, your location services on. Spotlight includes this in request to be able to show your local weather, businesses, and so on. Yes, of course it has to go to the cloud because it has to update in real time. Remember, it's not just sending it to, it's also pulling the data. That's why you're getting a lot of download, upload at the same time, because essentially your system is updating you. That's how you're able to get minute by minute updates on the weather and what's happening. So if a storm's coming through, you'll be able to clearly see what's happening. I mean, any web browser you use to look up local data will pull that for you. That's what it does. So I'm again, kind of like, if you want weather servicing and stuff like that, you kind of have to give up that data for it. You can't just magically go, based on the star alignment on Mars's girlfriend, that's how I'm able to determine that the storm's coming my way. No, you got to give up some kind of data for that. So I'm kind of not like seeing a problem with that. I can see a problem with the search inquiries. I mean, you don't really need to know every freaking thing I'm researching. That's kind of, there's just some things you don't need to see, kind of thing, right? Like if everybody can see exactly what you're researching, sometimes it will turn into oh my God, are you an RTU person? Like, or a Wings of Redemption moment, or a quartering moment. I can definitely see it turning into that. So I can understand the whole, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. See, contextual data. Information about the apps you use most often. If your general interest, news, technology, reading, etc., and your subscription so it can surface content in Apple Music or Apple TV, for example. The good news, like I read earlier, right there, right? So now I'm going to allow him to speak. So I'm going to unmute him and I'm going to bring it back to normal play speed. But I wanted that noted for those particular reasons.
There is some level of data they do, but, and this is a big but, there are ways to opt out of it. You can go through and not use Spotlight search. You can turn these.
Now, I wish he had read through. Now, this is one of my criticisms. I wish he had read through read parts of the article to show you what it takes and what's stored locally, what's not. See, I wish he had done that, because instead of just scrolling through the article and then showing you how to turn it off, show you what it's being taken and why you may want to turn it off. That's a criticism of mine in the video here. I do like the camera layout though, although I do kind of wish that what was it? It looks like using a full screen capture. I'm assuming it's OBS. I like the screen capture. The audio's okay. I wish the microphone didn't feel roomy, like it feels more direct, like I am right now when I'm talking to you, where you don't really hear a lot of the room. You just hear me directly talking to the microphone. That is something I wish he would do, but I'm not going to sit here and like cry about it and be like how terrible they are, because at least wise, for the most part, it's clear and concise. I can hear what he's saying. I can understand what he's saying, and I'm not sitting there going, what did he say again? Let me play that back. Like, no, I can hear what he's saying.
Things off. And he talks about what it does send. It's actually not a lot of data that Apple sends, nothing compared to Microsoft, but nonetheless, for those of you that are critical, like myself, and
Siri and dictation is where I can be more understanding. Now, this is where I can understand people being like, I don't like this at all. And we can get into that real quick. So let me go over here real quick and do the same thing again as I did before. Drop it down to 50. I'm sure this is probably annoying to you guys, but I want to like kind of break down a little bit more into this video about the stuff he's talking about here. So Apple has found itself in some pretty hot water over allegedly recording users without their knowledge and consent and allowing human reviewers to access those recordings. Call it a bug, call it an accidental, on purpose, whoopsie, but it's not a great look. While that issue, oh man, I don't remember how to pronounce that word because I'm tired. Whatever. While the issue has been corrected for the most part, there's still plenty of valid privacy concerns surrounding Siri. Apple's open about the fact that they save text transcripts of your Siri request, for example. Yes, that is true. And the point of that is to train Siri how to better hear you when you're asking it to help. That's obviously the point. And then he continues scrolling through the article. But he scrolls back up, which is annoying. Right here, right? So let's go right here. They state that these transcripts are not tied to your Apple account, your name, nor your email address, and are instead linked to a random identifier that rotates multiple times each hour. And this source in from Apple says, Apple stores transcripts of your interactions with Siri and may review a subset of these transcripts. Siri may also send information like your audio, Siri setup, contacts, and location to Apple to process your request. Data is not associated with your Apple account. I hope I read that good. Anyways, and that sounds great in theory, but that's not much help if your interactions include specific private information like names, phone numbers, and the like. Yada, yada, yada. Realistically, most of us aren't going to care about Apple reading transcripts of asking Siri to call mom. But the stuff that we don't think about that we might want to keep in mind. I would very much prefer a way to use Siri without Apple accessing my interaction logs in any form. Well, then how do you train Siri to get better? That's a problem. The whole point of Siri is to be a AI assistant. It has to train, and it would. And the thing is, as much as I would like for it to happen, we don't really have local computers, like a single computer that's capable of doing that, let alone your phone or your iPad. So I just, Users do have the option to help improve Siri and dictation when setting up a Mac or after a major update. If sharing audio recordings is checked, snippets of the audio of your request will also be sent to Apple. You may be fine with that, but I very much prefer to have that off. And reports there's only a small percentage of these are actually ever reviewed by humans, but I prefer a percentage of any of my requests to be reviewed to be 0. Well, that's, to me, I don't know about you, but that sounds very paranoid. In my opinion, that sounds very, very paranoid rather than privacy focused, because that's sounding like you're scared of somebody hearing you say, "Hey Siri, call mom," for example. Like, that's exactly what it sounds like, and I'm just saying I don't know, brother. That just sounds weird to me, man. That really does. But getting back to it. But even with the improved Siri dictation, transcripts are still sent. Here I do give Apple some praise though. In recent versions of macOS, especially with Apple Silicon, they moved to more and more of Siri's processing to the local machine, relying less on the cloud. That means for many requests, your data doesn't ever leave your machine. That's how it should be, in my opinion. Take notes, Microsoft. That is funny. Oh, they're felt it. They are felt it. He's felt it. Indeed. But getting back to it, right? Personally, I leave Siri off of my Mac. I work with enough confidential data that I would not want there to be any chance of Siri recording something it shouldn't. That's just a matter of preference. But if you must have Siri because either you need it or just like it, make sure that the proven Siri dictation is unchecked in settings under privacy and security, Alex improvement. I'm not seeing the point of doing so. I just don't. But let me go back over here real quick. Let's bring it back to normal speed. Let's bring you back over here real quick to let him talk.
Myself, and I imagine people who choose to watch this video, if you're using things like Siri dictation and all that, which I don't use any of, this can all be turned off. There's privacy settings to say, stop doing all of this. And a lot of the things on Apple do lean locally, as in they are using the local processing to get things done, as in not sending as much data out. And Apple does claim a lot to be, well, not tying this ID to you. So they're not going, hey, this data that went is specifically tied to that iTunes account that you signed in, or if you don't sign into an account with Apple, they're still not tying it to you or trying to tie it to you in some way. I believe them to an extent, but take it with a grain of salt. This is still a closed source operating system, and it's a cat and mouse game. Nothing near like it is in Windows. So I think this is probably for the average normal person going, can I just use a computer that doesn't absolutely do atrocious things to my privacy? I think Apple is in the kind of okay category. I don't think they're a great company. I'm not encouraging everyone to run out and get Apple, but for like the normal person who doesn't want to deal with any type of the complexities that might come with Linux, Apple is not the absolute worst. Microsoft has that category locked in. But of course, the next.
So, and the other thing I want to say about that, right, is that the problem that a lot of people run into, and ultimately the problem with Windows itself, is that Windows is built on the idea of collecting your data because a lot of keys are sold free. Are usually free because they're usually included with the system. You're essentially buying the system with it pre-installed, so you're going to deal with the telemetry that comes with it. And what was it? Recently, LG just got exposed by Gamers Nexus, which I hopefully will do a reaction to at some point, for installing McAfee, which is like the worst freaking antivirus, anti-malware thing, whatever you want to call it. It's so bad. It's so incredibly bad. And I don't like it at all. I really don't. I don't understand why people even remotely touch it. So it's so bad. It really is. But getting back to it, right? This is what I'm talking about right here. This is just bad. Just really, really bad. And as far as like Windows is concerned, it's bad. However, as far as I'm concerned right now, I'm seeing it as, and I don't know if the guy, I don't think he wrote this article. I'm pretty sure it was somebody else. But my thing is, right, is that that article felt like more of a like, less of a wake-up call and more of a, oh my god, macOS is doing this and that and the other, and it's trying to steal all your data, much like Windows, even though he kept saying it wasn't. In the article, he kept saying it wasn't. It was whoever the person was, I forget the name, and I apologize for getting the name. But the point that I'm trying to get at, right, is that you can't sit here and say that macOS is bad as Windows or anything like that when Apple's been pretty transparent about what goes and what doesn't, whereas Microsoft has actually been very, very sneaky about it. But let's get back to the video.
Next questions that come up are, what about Ubuntu or what about Pop OS? Because those are two other operating systems I use. I use Ubuntu from time to time as a desktop OS, which will enrage the Linux nerds. Apparently that I mentioned it was enough to get them leaving a lot of comments of they don't think Ubuntu is the proper choice. Linux people can be rather polarizing.
To speak to that, right, you'll tend to run into a lot of people who will just go off the rails the moment you talk about it, right? The moment you start talking about it is the moment they start going off the rails. They just like slam into you about it. It is unbelievable how quick they'll hit you. Like they will go off the freaking rails about it, right? I've noticed in my personal life that a lot, like, I've read a lot of distro Reddits and forums and whatnot, and the phrase I keep hearing is read the fucking manual, and that's just I don't know, man. Because here's the thing, right? If the average person, right? Because I'm more of an average person than I really am like I said, more of a tinkerer, right? So I'm somebody that probably would read through it. I probably would take a look into everything and see how it works, right? But the average person's not necessarily going to do that. And the fact that you would sit there and you would attack that individual over it is what gets me more than anything else. It's just, that's what gets me. Because like you would think, right? You would think personally that you would want somebody to basically, try to interact with you. I get that it gets boring sometimes having to answer the same question over and over and over and over and over and again, and it gets annoying. And after a while, you're just like, come on, man. But at the same time, sometimes you have to do that because, like, again, you're dealing with a society that has a microwave worth of patience, meaning that they expect everything to be instant. They don't like things to take a while. So that's what you're going to run into, again, at least in my opinion. But getting back to this article, it's a pretty obvious that, well, not this article, but getting back to the video, I should say, it's pretty obvious that a lot of people get upset by that. They get upset if you choose to tell them Ubuntu or Pop! OS because a lot of the Linux community hates the idea of telemetry in general, meaning that no system should take any kind of telemetry to improve. You should just magically be able to improve it. Or at least that's what the outsider looking at goes in. Now, as someone who's seen the inside of it, I get what those people are saying. The idea is that you, the user, should be able to fix what you have. You shouldn't have to rely on other people to fix it. A user should be able to boot up the terminal, punch in 2 commands, fix the software, and away you go. Fix the OS and keep going. Not have to spend hours debugging or having to jump through hoops just to fix your software. It should be, or in catastrophic scenarios, you should be able to just reinstall everything, starting from the boot drive, and then away you go. And just re-add your data from a NASDAQ that you connected or from a local drive that you hooked up. I get that's what a lot of them are saying, but you gotta, well, like I tell people, you gotta remember from an outside perspective that it comes off like you're essentially saying, well, how dare you not learn my system? You're too insignificant, basically. And it's just wrong, right? It's just wrong. Well, let's continue.
I do use Pop! OS as well, but let's talk about what they reach out to. Now, first, there's no online account that needs to be set up at all for Ubuntu or Pop! OS. Now, Ubuntu, when you set it up, does check their Snap store. Snaps are packages, essentially, that can be loaded on the system, so it goes and checks the Snap packages, and they have essentially like a store that you can go and load the apps from. So these are...
So let's read the data together, shall we? API.snapcraft.io. Snap Store's API that checks for Snap updates and metadata, the bulk of the traffic. Like you said, checking for apps and whatnot. That makes sense. If you're going to have an app store, you got to have something to check for the latest versions. Could you imagine one set of systems have this version of Steam, but it has all these vulnerabilities and the new version is only available when you reinstall the system? Yeah, that would drive a lot of people nuts. And reasonably so. So you got to have telemetry if you're going to go that route. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because either that or you force Valve to sell physical copies of the disc again, but then telemetry's got to still go to the system to the app anyhow, because the app would need to connect to their stores. So it's like, it makes no sense to get upset about that. That's why I don't get that. That makes no sense to me. Dashboard, snapcraft.io. The other half of the Snap Store backend right there. Changelogs.ubuntu.com. Package changelog up data for the update tooling. Let's see, context.canonico.com goes Ubuntu Pro subscription / entitlement check. So basically checking to see if you paid for a pro version of the license or if you have the standard install. Okay, understandably so. Livepatch.canonico.com. Canonical live patch kernel patching. So I'm assuming that's supposed to be like instant updates that patch a bug in the kernel's code. And then esm.ubuntu.com. Expanded security maintenance repos for Ubuntu Pro. These are all package managed and subscription checks. I don't see much of a problem with that. I mean, all of that makes pretty logical sense, but I'm curious to see what he says. What does he say about that?
All the different calls that are going out to there. Then you have the package changelog data for update tooling, Ubuntu Pro subscription. There is a Pro subscription option with Ubuntu that allows you live patching and some other updates. Once again, that's why it checks the live patch, and the expanded security maintenance repos for Ubuntu Pro. These are the Ubuntu Pro account checks. It just looks to see if you have them. If it validates, it'll do those. Pop! OS, on the other hand, is really minimal. This is the more common you'll see for a lot of different Linux distributions, where there's just not any data being sent back other than it checks for captive portal with a connectivity check, and then it checks the backend for OS releases in the Pop Shop. That's it. There's nothing else going on in a Pop! OS. And once again, local account and no way to create like an online Pop! OS account. They don't have that. They don't have a way to even tie you to this Pop! OS.
I do think that this is something that a lot of Linux systems should look into, is having a cloud backup. Having a way to make a cloud backup of your system that you can access at any time. I do actually think that should be a thing. And the reason why I do is because, for example, iCloud has saved my butt more than once. More than once did I delete something that I didn't mean to delete, or lose something I didn't lose, or a file got corrupted, and I had a backup version of it that I could download, and then away I go. Or if there was an app I wanted to re-download or whatever, right? I've uploaded to my iCloud before, and I was able to get it and reinstall it as if there was no problem to that. Time Machine. Time Machine is a really great local version. I think Linux systems should, because you can also set up network versions of Time Machine as well. Google Drive has saved my butt a lot too. Google Drive legitimately saves my bacon a lot. It still saves my bacon. I still love that my buddy and my boss Adam pays for it like he does, because legitimately it's fantastic. I love it. I wish my internet connection was better, because then I could take more advantage of it. But however, for the time being, when I can use it, it works great. And I've got no complaints. It's fantastic. Well, let's continue.
Install that you did. There's a very different ecosystem once you get into Linux. And I'm not going to say there's no telemetry for any distribution. And for example, even in Ubuntu, it does ask you if you would like to share some data with them. But
similar to macOS right here, right? At the start of it, you see it right here. Share system data with the Ubuntu team. This includes hardware information, language, and time zone. See? Like that does help, because then they can take a look at it and see, oh, you got this is from this time zone, this is roughly where this is at, this is what the language of the system is, and then the hardware they're using, so they can try and recreate whatever bug or situation happened that caused your system to have a major malfunction. So again, makes perfectly logical sense. I'm not seeing a problem with that. And then sharing error reports with Ubuntu. See, there you go. Now you can share those logs as well with that data. So now they can, again, recreate the scenario and fix it. So when you get another update, you yourself, as the user who probably paid for a subscription license, won't have to worry about that any further. I mean, all of this is just like common sense logic. I'm just saying.
that is an opt-in option that you have to choose to opt in. It does not opt in by.
Now, I will say that I wish the screen recording was a little better, because you could see the bars and everything where you record it. I wish he had done it. I don't know if that was an editing choice, or if he just, like, the capture card he was using or whatever just wasn't working, or if he was using a virtual machine. But I'm not a fan of the bars thing. I wish it, like, naturally filled in the screen. But that's just me. That's how I feel about it. Let's continue.
Default. There's no such options at all in Pop! OS, and many other distributions don't have this either. Now, I realize a lot of people don't just use Windows because they're familiar with the operating system. It's usually because the application they want to use only works in Windows, games being a really big category. Now, there's been a lot of work to get games over to Linux, and I find my gaming experience on my Linux laptop to be quite good. And
that's framework 16, I believe. Yeah, that's 16. And yeah, look, like SteamOS and BaziOS and CachyOS has, Bazi, excuse me. I got that name wrong for some reason. Anyways, that doesn't matter. The point is that those operating systems, right, have done a fantastic job for Linux gaming. I mean, Code Weavers have done a fantastic job with Wine, and I can't credit them enough with the great work they've done. My thing is that you need more native support. Much like macOS with gaming, native support is necessary and it should be pushed for. You should push harder for native support. And that's where I like what SteamOS is doing, pushing directly for native support rather than just running Windows versions. You're getting direct native support. And ultimately the only way to do it is to buy the Linux copies, buy the Mac copies, and say, hey, this is what I want. I want it to run on my system. I don't want to sit there and emulate this stuff. I want to have native performance that's just as good as what's on Windows. And ultimately, I find as more people choose to move over to Linux, the more likely it is to happen. So that I do agree. However, I don't agree with the idea that the premise of the video saying that you can't telemetry out, because so far you haven't shown me how you can't. That's the thing about it. Is like, if you've paid attention so far to the video, right, and you hadn't just like skipped to this part or towards the end of the video, you've noticed he's talked about how to debloat macOS, debloating, if you want to call it that in quotation marks, but it's not really debloating. It's just turning off a couple of features that if you don't use, then it's no point in having it on. And showing that a couple of Linux versions, like Linux distros, I should say, have some telemetry. But you haven't shown me why Windows can't be debloated. That's the problem. Past saying, oh, well, the updates will break it. I mean, updates break a lot of things. Windows is a freaking hot mess for a reason. There's a reason why a lot of people are leaving, and Microsoft is begging for people to come back, is because they used too much AI coding and they didn't have enough devs checking that AI code before it was added to the kernel. The code should be developed by the developers and then distributed by AI. That's the way it should be done. That the AI streamlines how the code gets put together, but the code itself should be made by devs who know what they're doing. Because then the AI bot just goes, okay, so you want this section to go here with this section, and this all connects together like this. And then a dev go over it, like a team of devs designed specifically to make sure that the code's run correctly and that it streamlines together and makes the system operate better. That's the way it should be handled, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. I just want to make sure you understand my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God!
Because some people will take that and run this freaking ragged circle about, oh, look at him, he's saying that Linux is terrible. How dare he? May I take your headset? And it's so annoying. It's so annoying because that's how some Linux people are. And then I'm like, and you wonder why no one will freaking join Linux, because you're being a dick. Stop being a dick. It's not that hard. Bruh. Just saying. Anyways, let's continue.
That is good for me, but it may not be the right answer for you, because if you don't like the same games I like and you have a game that only supports Windows, well, that's going to be a challenge, and I don't really have a solution for that problem right now. Also, I don't have any particular script I recommend because I just don't use them. I abandoned Windows in 2009, and I only have done it as a business support product, as in when I was running my MSP before I sold off that side of the business, I helped a lot of people manage their Windows computers and manage all the Windows updates. So I never used any particular customized remove bloatware type of scripts from Windows. We would use the Windows Business Editions and load our own telemetry software on there so we can monitor and manage systems. So it goes outside of my knowledge of these scripts that are generally for people, even like myself, who are much more privacy oriented, which is why I've always run Linux and why I moved away from Windows so many years ago. But nonetheless, love hearing from all of you. Leave your thoughts and comments down below. Are you considering switching to Linux? one last straw, the telemetry, or was it the shoving in of Copilot or whatever else might make you want to leave the Windows world? Always curious to those of you that want to stay in the Windows world and fight the good fight and keep those scripts going and, debloating Windows is certainly a pain because there's always some stupid thing they're stuffing in there or driving you crazy with, like, hey, you should sign up for this or that or whatever service they're trying to push, because it's kind of like an operating system that is an advertisement to sell more subscription services for them. Anyways, I'll leave those rants for the comments. Let me know on that. Hit me up in the forums at forums.lawrencesystems.com. You'll find a link to the forum post I was reading that telemetry data from and that Mac article for those of you that say maybe Mac is okay. And like I said, as of right now, Mac is okay, but okay is all I would give it. I use it for media creation, but that's really it. It's really good at video editing, but I don't really trust it. It's still a closed source operating system, and you're an update away from them becoming, well, much worse and going more like Microsoft. I don't know if they will. I'm just saying you're dealing with a closed source operating system that could go that way.
Major problem with that statement. Major, just absolutely major state. That is one of sorry, I'm going to be sorry here. Actually, I shouldn't be sorry, but I am. That's a dumb statement. Here's why it's a dumb statement. Apple doesn't make their money off of software like that. They don't make money off of telemetry data. They make their money off of hardware. There's a reason why they charge as much as they charge for the hardware. It's because they don't take that much telemetry data, so they subsidize it by you paying more for the hardware. That's why they make so much money. That's why Apple doesn't take that much, and Apple is going to continue doing so. As long as people pay the premium for the Apple tax, essentially, for the hardware, they're not going to go and get the telemetry data because they don't need it. They already make tons and tons of money off of that. Plus their subscriptions, their iCloud subscription, the Apple One subscription, now their Creative Studio subscription, which is, but I bought a copy of Logic Pro for $200. That's my copy now. I got a copy of it, and I can use it as long as I want to, and I get perpetual updates, to my knowledge. So, again, that's just paranoia right there. In my opinion, that's just a paranoid statement that was just meant to go, well, actually, you shouldn't get macOS. You should just get this Linux system, whatever. But I'm not actually going to tell you what system you should try out. I'm just going to leave you to not be able to figure that out. And you left the video without telling me why Windows is bloated, and how you can't remove that bloat. And you even said it right there, you haven't used Windows since 2009. So that creates an even bigger problem with the video. That creates so many problems with the video. This is why I didn't think it was a good video. Because there was so much about it. It felt misleading. In my opinion, this feels like a very misleading video that just didn't make logical sense. It just felt like you were misleading people to understand certain things. While yes, it is true that macOS does technically spy on you, you can turn a lot of those settings off. But that's the thing, you can turn them off. With Windows, you don't talk about Windows. Here's the thing. For anyone who watches this video, right, and wants to make a video like this, here's what I suggest you do. You take your script, right, and you do a comparison, side-by-side comparison. Show what you can turn off on Apple, show what you can turn off on Windows, and then go, now which one do you think is more privacy-focused? And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be the MacBook. Because MacBooks aren't built to be telemetry machines in the same way that Windows are. Why? Because Microsoft doesn't subsidize it through hardware. They make their money off of the telemetry data they get. Apple subsidizes it through the hardware and the subscriptions. That's how they do it. Well, Microsoft does have subscriptions and it has keys that you can pay for. The thing is, the keys tend to be pretty horrendously expensive and you have to meet certain requirements to even get certain kinds of keys, like the enterprise key, for example. And there's even versions of Windows that you as a consumer are not allowed to have. That if you do have, it could cause legal issues for you. So, Again, I feel the video is misleading. It's a boo video. Boo. Just boo. Boo. Not good. In my opinion, it was not good. It didn't tell you past 4 or 5 sentences. And it's the whole freaking video, and at the beginning and the end, of why Windows is you can't get through it. But it shows you how macOS does it. It shows you how Linux does it. But it doesn't show you why Windows is so bad off. So in my opinion, he should have added that part. He should have added the part about Windows and going like, hey, this is why Windows is like, and showing you an example of, hey, I ripped all the telemetry. Now watch me update this. Get an older version of Windows, right? And get it to update and then show how the telemetry gets turned back on. If he had done that, just a 30-second part of that, right? I would have been cool with that. That would have made this video fantastic. But no, boo, trash video, no good. I don't think it was a good video. He seems like a great creator. It's just, I feel this video is misleading. That is ultimately how I feel. Now, I'm not saying go harass him or go attack him or go do this or go do that. No, don't do that. Don't act like that. But anyways, I want to say, however, that people should consider looking at moving over to macOS or Linux. Especially if you want to do more creative work, I would say macOS. If you want to do video and audio recording and editing, macOS is the way to go. But if you want to do a lot more tinkering stuff, you're more of a developer or like a super nerdy gamer kind of person, and you don't want to deal with Windows constantly stealing your data, then Linux is more of the way to go. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And until next time, this is Agent Tims from the Den of Tims signing out. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, join the Patreon. $1.50 a month. I'm not asking for much, but if you want to give more, you can give more. I obviously have a merch shop below. You should totally check it out. And see y'all next time.